What's up, captains? Now, before we get into today's awakening conversation that will actually put you to sleep, I want to give you a word from our sponsors, all of which will help improve your sleep as well. So let's dive into it. First off, we've got Magnesium Breakthrough, which Devin actually mentions on our conversation as one of the best supplements that you could possibly take. And as you, I hope, know, I concur. Magnesium is my number one recommended supplement because, as you hear Devin talk about in our conversation together, it not only helps you reduce your stress levels, but it also helps improve deep sleep, both of which are crucial for obviously optimizing the quality of your sleep. And not only that, but magnesium also plays a role in over 300 different enzymatic functions in the body. And unfortunately, up to 80% of Americans are deficient in it, as our soil has been depleted of nutrients. So even if you're eating a wide-ranging diet of quality foods, then you're still probably not getting the magnesium requirement. So that is why I supplement with Magnesium Breakthrough, recommend it to all my clients. I even got my parents on it. I give out bottles to all my friends. This, if you take nothing else, this is going to be a huge game changer. Even after just one night of taking magnesium, you should notice dramatically improved sleep quality. You'll be able to wake up the next morning feeling refreshed and actually energized to tackle your day. So if you guys want the hookup on Magnesium Breakthrough, you can get 10% off by going to magbreakthrough.com/Taylor. The link will be in the show notes of this podcast. Next up, this episode is brought to you by Lambs, this EMF blocking clothing, which Devin also mentions on this show. And let me demonstrate how I use this Lambs beanie for bed. So I literally sleep like this. So it's over my eyes, as you can see, if you're watching the YouTube video. So not only does this protect my brain from the oxidative stress caused by EMFs, but it also blocks out any excess light from entering my eyeballs while I'm sleeping. Because even if you aren't aware of the light that you're being exposed to from outside street lights, cars driving by, whatever, your body still reacts to that. So that's why I always wear an eye mask, and I use my Lambs beanie for that because of the protective effects from oxidative stress. So EMFs, if you're not familiar, are emitted from things like your cell phone, Wi-Fi, 5G, electronic devices, things like that. And it disrupts the quality of your sleep. So that's why you want to block as much EMFs as possible, especially in a time where you're spending a third of your life in bed. All right. So I always wear my EMF blocking beanie to sleep. And if you guys want to get the hookup on anything from Lambs, you can head over to getlambs.com and enter code Captain Morgan. That will save you 10% on their EMF blocking clothing. Next up, and on the same topic of EMFs, this episode is brought to you by WaveBlock, this sticker that I've got on the back of my phone that actually prevents some of the EMF from being emitted from your phone, which is super cool, especially if you still sleep with your phone, hopefully not on your bed, although I have seen some people do that, and even next to your bed, it's emitting EMFs. So basically, the farther away you can keep your phone away from your body, the better. And of course, keep it on airplane mode. And if you still say, Taylor, I have to have my phone by my bedside for whatever reason, at least have a wave block sticker on the back of it to reduce the amount of EMFs that you're exposed to. And you can get the hookup on anything from WaveBlock because they also make stickers that wrap around AirPods. So you can get 20% off by being a listener to the Captain's Lifestyle podcast if you head over to waveblock.com and enter code Captain Morgan or use the discount link in the show notes. And last but most certainly not least, this podcast is brought to you by HVMN, specifically their new Ketone IQ drinkable ketones. And I have been hooked on these ketones for, well, actually ever since they sent them to me, because they're freaking amazing. The amount of mental clarity that I get in the morning when I'm fasted, this will usually be the first thing that I break my fast with in the morning, because although it doesn't have any proteins, carbs, or fats, it does break your fast. It's just drinkable ketones. So you're still in ketosis. And like I said, the level of mental clarity and energy that it provides is unparalleled. I take 1 serving in the morning for mental clarity and then 2 servings in the morning if I'm using it as a pre-workout. And it has been fantastic. And actually, fun fact here, you can actually get by on less sleep when you are in ketosis. So double whammy, actually triple whammy here. Mental clarity, physical performance, and you can get by on less sleep when you're in ketosis. So to get the hookup on anything from HVMN, including their new Ketone IQ product, you can head over to hvmn.com and enter code Captain Morgan 10. That will save you 10% on drinkable ketones. All right, without further ado, let's dive into today's wonderful conversation with the sleep expert, Devin Burke. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Taylor Morgan. On today's episode, we have another special guest who I am very excited to talk to because, as you guys know, I am a stickler for high quality sleep, and so is my guest today. His name is Devin Burke. He is an international and TEDx speaker, as well as the best-selling author of The Sleep Advantage. He also founded the Sleep Science Academy and is one of the top health and sleep coaches in the world. His books, keynotes, programs, and videos have inspired thousands of people to improve their sleep, energy, and overall life. Devin helps high achievers and exhausted insomniacs get and stay asleep so they can wake up with more peace, power, and presence. And he was even named one of the top 25 health coaches in America. He studied innovative holistic coaching methods for some of the world's top health and human performance experts for over a decade. I could go on and on,
but please don't.
Devin, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me aboard the ship, Captain.
There we go. Right on brand. Love it.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to sail the sea with you and talk sleep here.
Let's do it. Because we were talking a little bit before we started recording on how you kind of got into this as well. And it sounds like we have similar stories. I was a CrossFit coach for about 5 years. And I would have my athletes coming to me, saying, "Hey coach, I've been coming into the gym for this long now. Why am I not seeing the results?" And I would always ask them, like, "How's your sleep? How are your stress levels? What are you eating?" And their answers would always be the same. Like, "Oh yeah, I'm lucky if I get 6 hours of sleep, and, diet is okay. And, super stressed out from work or relationships." And then more and more, I started to realize that it doesn't matter if you're working out for an hour of the day, if the other 23 hours of your lifestyle is poor, especially poor quality sleep. So realized very quickly that sleep is one of the most important things in your life to function properly. So go ahead and give a brief introduction on how you came to find the importance of high quality sleep.
Yeah, so it wasn't out of my own sleep issues. I'm actually an incredible sleeper. I sleep so well that I thought I just took it for granted. I never realized how much of a gift that was. And like we were talking before we jumped on here, I was working with a lot of high performing entrepreneurs, more holistic life coaching like you do. And one particular person had sleep issues. And this was about 5-6 years ago at this point. So I looked into, okay, well, let's see what's available for people that have sleep issues, and found sleeping medication, which when I started to look into the different medications, I was horrified by, the side effects, how toxic they were to the body. So I said, oh, there's got to be other things available for people that have sleep issues. And I kept looking, and what I found really wasn't very much. So I found CBTI therapist. If you're lucky to find somebody that actually, practices that. But even after looking into that, I was like, there's some things there I don't really resonate with all the way. So long story short, I got very interested in it because I saw that it was a massive problem, not a lot of good solutions. And then when I looked into the science of it, like pun intended here, my eyes were open to how important and powerful sleep was. And that just kind of set me on this trajectory to really learn as much as I could about sleep. I was able to help that one particular person. And I said, well, if I can help one person, I can help thousands or millions of people with this. And that's what I've been doing. That's been my mission for the last, 5-6 years is really giving people the tools, strategies to help them solve this one specific challenge, which is sleep.
Yeah. And I always say sleep is the rising tide that raises all ships. So it is
Great
that one
quote.
challenge, but once you improve sleep, all these other issues that you would have never really correlated with sleep, they all tend to get better because you're optimizing the quality of the sleep.
It's the foundation of health. It really is. I mean, in my TEDx talk, I kind of have this sort of these couple lines where I'm talking about you can go a couple of weeks without food. It's like you can go a lifetime without really exercising or moving your body. You're not going to be fit and healthy, but you can do it. But one night of sleep and your whole system is wrecked. From a mental standpoint, from a recovery standpoint, from an energy standpoint, from a hormonal standpoint, like everything just gets thrown off. And so sleep literally is that foundation. I mean, air and water are probably, a bit more important, I guess. We're talking in hierarchy here. But sleep is right there, so it's so important.
Yeah. I always say sleep is the second most important thing in your life besides oxygen, right? Because you can only go a few minutes without breathing. But I'm sure the stats on this. Like after one single night of sleep deprivation, or complete no sleep, isn't it the same as if you were drunk?
Yeah. There's a lot of very interesting sleep science research that shows you literally are operating like you're intoxicated. And which when I actually learned about the detrimental effects of literally just one night of poor sleep, it actually freaked me out. I'll be really honest. And it freaked me out because people are driving sleep deprived. So they're driving around essentially drunk. Doctors and nurses.
It's bad.
It's bad. Like I was like, do never take me to a hospital unless I am like, I absolutely need to, because and really, I found that's the third leading cause of death is mistakes in hospitals. And I guarantee you it's because they're not sleeping. These doctors are overstressed, the nurses, they're giving wrong medication, they're, taking out wrong organs, all kinds of crazy stuff that you really never hear about. Thank God we have doctors, but anyway, that freaked me out. It totally freaked me out. I was like, wow. Because it's your mental capacity, your mental acuity, your ability to make decisions, your reaction time. One night of poor sleep, and let's define what poor sleep is: less than 7 hours. And depending on who you are and how much sleep that you have and the other things and aspects of your lifestyle, it's going to have a bigger impact on you if it's more or less. But most people are not getting enough sleep. So most people are walking around in a sleep deprived sort of drunk state, unfortunately.
I'm glad you said 7 hours, because I've been saying the same thing as well. Like sleep deprivation is anything less than 7 hours of quality sleep. And people would look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, well, I only get 6 hours a night and I feel fine.
Yeah.
I hate that. Like I feel fine, or, I'm getting by on less than 7 hours of sleep. Do you want to go into the difference between like feeling fine and like thriving, like how we're actually supposed to feel on quality sleep?
Yeah, this is what's so challenging, Taylor, is because it's their low energy experience becomes what they know. So they don't know any different. They think, oh, my brain's operating at a high capacity. I have great energy. But there's a whole nother level if you would prioritize and protect your sleep that you could access. But it becomes your operating norm to be sort of underperforming, essentially. And you don't know that until you consistently prioritize sleep and get more of it. And that's where it becomes really dangerous for people. And people are like, oh yeah, I don't need any sleep. And to be honest, you can absolutely get away with periods of time where you have less sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But it eventually catches up with you. And depending on what you're doing as far as a lifestyle standpoint, nutrition, hydration, environment, all the things, it's going to impact you at a higher or lower degree. Right. So it's not true. Most people, there are very, very small percentage of people that actually have a genetic sort of disposition where they can get away with less sleep. Most people think they have that and they don't. So yeah, it's if you're listening to this, try it on. Just try to get an hour more of sleep, and just consistently for a few weeks, and see what a difference it makes. if you're somebody right now who thinks you can get away with 6 hours consistently.
Yeah. And I mentioned that in my program. It's the DEC2 gene, correct? It's a mutation in that gene.
That could too. Yep.
Yeah. And I tell them that, and was like, hey, I know that, you high achieving entrepreneurs out there think that you probably, can get by and, you're functioning, at maximal level on less sleep, but let's test your genes. Let's see if you actually have this mutation that allows you to get by on 6.25 hours of sleep. And it's like less than 1% of the population that has that mutation.
Right.
And, even if you do have that mutation, getting more sleep is probably still a good idea. Or I would not necessarily more, I would say better quality.
For sure.
Let me hear your take on this. Because I'm sure it's not about the 7 hours, right? It's about the ratio between REM sleep and deep sleep and the actual quality of those hours.
Yeah. I mean, duration is, you're not going to get quality sleep if you don't have enough sleep, right? If you don't have a big enough sleep window to even create the opportunity to get higher quality sleep. But yeah, absolutely. There's a difference between, the amount of sleep you're getting and the amount of quality sleep you're getting. And so, I mean, really simply, we go every 90 minutes through a sleep cycle. We go through, there's 2 different types of sleep. There's REM and non-REM. Non-REM, we have 4 different stages: stage 1, 2, light sleep; stage 3 and 4, deep delta sleep. And then REM sleep, rapid eye movement. So we're coming in and out of those different stages every 90 minutes. And if we're doing it right, we're getting, 4 to 5.5 cycles a night. So yeah, each of those stages are important. And when we're talking about quality sleep, we're talking about stage 3 and 4, deep sleep, and then REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. That's when like most of the magic, I guess you could say, happens. Although to get to those stages, you need stage 1 and 2, and they exist for a reason, right? So
yeah. And going back to the doctors, I had never, because I've always known that doctors and nurses get, horrible sleep. Well, not always, but once I became aware of sleep and, the detrimental effects of shift work, and the amount of stress that is placed on them, or that they place on themselves. Yeah. The poor sleep being attributed to, mistakes or errors in the hospital, surgeries, for example, because there's so many like crazy disasters that have been directly linked to poor sleep, like the explosion at Chernobyl, the disaster at 3 Mile Island, the Exxon Valdez oil spill. All these things were directly linked to sleep deprivation.
Yeah, Space Shuttle Challenger explosion also is another one. Any most major sort of mistakes or disasters, after they really kind of studied why they happen, they're linked to sleep deprivation. So and if you think about it, like even Bill Clinton said, every mistake he made in his life, he could link to being fatigued. But like even on just like a personal level, like think about the last time you made a bad decision, whether it was like lash out in anger or a business decision. Oftentimes, if you think back, you made those decisions when you were fatigued, mentally, emotionally, physically. So, when we're underslept and we don't have the energy, we make bad decisions. Decisions dictate our destiny. So it's like, that's one of the primary drivers to really protect and prioritize sleep, is to make better decisions. And like, what's interesting now is the top entrepreneurs in the world now are prioritizing sleep. Like Jeff Bezos, he said the secret to his success was sleep in an interview. Bill Gates, he's a 7-hour guy. Mark Zuckerberg is 7-hour. Ariana Huffington, 7 hours. Athletes like LeBron James, he's 12 hours. Roger Federer, 12 hours. Tom Brady, 9 hours. He just announced he's coming back, right? He got even probably more sleep. Now he's ready to rock for another season. So anyway, so like people are now understanding, because it's now becoming cool to sleep. Whereas before, sleep was seen as like a weak habit of low performers, waste of time, this whole machismo thing, like, I don't need sleep, like blah, blah, blah. Like that's kind of shifting. Like our generation is understanding and investing in their health. And with the technology, like the Oura Ring, which I saw you're wearing, which is what we use at Sleep Science Academy to help all our clients understand their sleep at a deeper level. It's changing. So things are changing as far as, but then there are still hospitals and like, these hospitals are just abusing these doctors and nurses with their schedules. And we have a long way to come as far as from a society standpoint to, really get there, but the boat is starting to turn for sure.
Yeah. And thank goodness, because especially in the high achiever world that we operate in, it was, I think still for the most part, it's still, I would say majority on like hustle grinds, that sort of, work till you drop, I'll sleep when I'm dead culture. And they think that they can get by and be more productive by cutting into their sleeping hours, when in fact it's just the opposite. Roughly like $150 billion is lost to lost productivity via poor sleep. Like, so explain this a little bit. Like, people think that they're being more productive by cutting into their sleeping hours, but in reality, it's not actual productive work that's getting done.
Yeah, and that doesn't become real until it becomes your experience. And this is why it becomes really challenging to motivate people to actually prioritize and protect their sleep. Because just like if you were at a party, Taylor, and somebody was drinking, and everyone at the party could tell that this person couldn't drive or shouldn't drive, but that they are like, oh, good. Like, I'm good. No worry. Like, it's this misperception that happens with sleep that people just they don't make the link between not getting enough sleep and making bad decisions. It becomes this subjective blind spot. And so, yeah, I mean, it's it's a huge issue when people don't realize that it's like, it's having literally, there's not a piece of your life that's not affected by it. From your relationships to your career, to your health and energy, to your, sexual health. You can't separate your night from your day from your night. So like, there's nothing in your world that doesn't get improved when you improve everything gets improved when you improve your sleep, right? So, and vice versa. So it really is, it's that essential.
Yeah. Sleep is the rising tide that raises all ships, right?
That's it.
So I know we've talked a lot about, some of the things that are affected by poor sleep. Give us some other little known things that people might not even be aware of that are affected by low quality sleep.
So one of the interesting things that I found in the research that I've done is with relationships. So specifically emotions. So people misinterpret emotions. They're more likely to, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. You're walking down the street and you see somebody looking at you, and maybe you think that they're like looking at you angrily, or they're like, but really they were just walking down the street and it had nothing to do with you. So people misread emotion, which then leads to conflict. In close relationship, and they've done a lot of interesting research on relationships and sleep deprivation. And one of the reasons why it has such an impact is this, emotional. Not only do you misinterpret emotion, you're not able to emotionally regulate yourself. So you're more irritable, you're more on edge. Little things become big things, which leads to oftentimes relationship conflict. And that's like, if your relationship's off or your relationships are off, that really has a massive impact. And it's a huge drain on your energy. You could have your health dialed in, you could have your business dialed in, your finances and all those things. But if your relationships are, not in order, it kind of just destroys all of that. Like, you just can't think straight, it's like, so I think that's really interesting and important for people to understand, is this whole emotional regulation, as well as your ability to regulate stress. So it's bidirectionally linked with stress. So the more stress you experience, the less rest you experience, the more stress you experience. So that becomes a dangerous loop that people get caught on. And there's a lot of ways of sort of understanding that and sifting through that. But I love to explore this connection between stress and sleep and stress, because a lot of times people just don't make that connection. And it blows my mind, because it's obvious now to me, but it's so important to talk about and understand.
Yeah, I think most people's cortisol levels are reversed. Like, they're low in the morning, so they rely on, coffee to wake them up, to increase their cortisol, and then their cortisol levels are high in the evening because they work right up until bedtime. And so it's all shifted, and they wonder why they can't sleep well.
Yeah, I say people take their days into their nights.
Ooh.
So they take their days into their nights. And so it's really important to, create space, we call a bed buffer, between your day and your night, and do things to really protect that time so that your body can get back into the parasympathetic. Because it's not just like a light switch. We don't just like power off like computers, although most of us wish that was the case. And wouldn't that be nice? You just hit a button and like, you're just like powered down. It doesn't work like that, right?
And I've had people say that they can just go to sleep immediately. And let me get your take on this. I think if you can just kind of turn off and just pass out, I think that is a very clear sign of sleep deprivation, and your body's just screaming like, we need sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. So we call it sleep latency. And so if you, as soon as your head hits the pillow, if you're out, you're probably not getting enough sleep. That's usually a sign that there is some sleep deprivation, or the quality of your sleep could be improved. And then, sleep efficiency is time in bed actually asleep. And you want your sleep efficiency to be 90% or above. That's considered like, a good sleeper. And most people are not getting that as far as sleep efficiency. And it's like, they're like, oh, well, how much sleep do you get? Well, I get 8 hours. I'm like, okay, well, how long are you in bed? I'm in bed for 8 hours. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot less than 8 hours. And so that's where like measuring is so important. Having the Oura Ring. I was actually just on the phone with the Oura, some of the guys from the Oura Ring today, talking about some stuff. And it's just awesome. Like it's awesome to see the data. It's awesome to see the choices you make, how it impacts the quality of your sleep, and sort of start to draw those conclusions. And I think they're doing a fantastic job of really helping this be tangible so that people can make these better decisions.
Mm. Yeah. Speaking of Oura Ring, go ahead and explain a little bit about what it is and why it's so important to track these things.
Yeah. So the Oura Ring, essentially, it's a sleep tracker that you wear on your finger, and it measures stages of sleep, sleep efficiency, sleep latency, which is, again, how fast you fall asleep, how long you're asleep when you're in bed. It measures stages of sleep. So, REM sleep, deep sleep. It also measures some other things like heart rate variability, and which is a sign for recovery, how good your body is recovering or not. It measures body temperature. So essentially what it does is it pulls all of these metrics, these body metrics, then it puts them through algorithms, and it gives you the score to kind of tell you, hey, this is how well you slept. And it's been really fun. I've been using them for right after they launched their second generation ring, which was a couple of years ago, I think 3 or 4, maybe longer, 5 years ago. And you can kind of, it's interesting to then you see like, hey, I cut out alcohol, I limited my caffeine, I did these things and you can actually see a difference in your sleep. And then when you can see it, and then you can also feel it, then it's easier to, to stick to some of these things that can be challenging, like limiting sugar, or limiting caffeine, or, putting on the blue light blocking glasses, or turning off half your lights, all these little hacks that are really simple to do that sometimes we just aren't as motivated to do because we can't see the impact. The Oura Ring makes it really tangible so that you can stay consistent with these things that work.
Yeah. You get those visual results. You get the instant feedback is helpful for people to see. And speaking of all these hacks and sleep habits, what are some of, and you don't have to do the basics like, light exposure in the morning and reducing it in the evening. Let's get into some maybe lesser known hacks that optimize sleep quality.
Well, the two things that control sleep, there's 2 systems in the body, Taylor, that I'm sure you're aware of, but maybe not your audience. So sleep pressure, so the buildup of what's called the neurochemical adenosine, and really body temperature as well is really important, the circadian rhythm. So those are the 2. So it's this buildup of this adenosine, which creates this sleep pressure, desire for sleep. And then there's also the circadian clock. So doing things to optimize that. And one of those things is looking at body temperature. So there are things you can put in your bed and bedroom to obviously making it cold, but like the chili pad, there's all these cool things, Sleep 8 Pod Pro. You can upgrade your blankets to something that doesn't hold heat, upgrade your bed. A mattress is the most important piece of furniture you own. So make sure you have a mattress that doesn't hold body heat. So optimizing for body temperature, there's things you can do in your environment. There's also habits you can do, like cold water exposure. You can do hot showers, because your body temperature needs to drop 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit to induce sleep, right? So, but also throughout the night, there's different stages of sleep that correlate with different body temperatures as well. And so, depending on how interested you are in optimizing this critical 1/3 of your life, I mean, you can really take it as far as you want to take it. But then there's also the EMFs. You can look at, well, am I getting EMF exposure? Is that affecting my heart rate variability? And what can I put in place to protect some of that? Like turning off your cell phone, getting out of your bedroom, having a timer on your Wi-Fi. They do make some, you can wear clothing that has Faraday shields, necklaces and things that can sort of help harmonize the frequencies. So there's all kinds of like new tech that's coming out to help with the EMFs. But at the end of the day, you have to experiment with this stuff. There's not a one size fit all that like, hey, just do this and it'll like make the difference in your sleep. You really have to be open to experimenting with all the things: your diet timing, your environment, your psychology. So it's hard for me to always give like a blanket statement of like, hey, here's the magic recipe. If you just do this, it's going to like, you have to be open to experimenting. So at our academy, we take a very systematic approach, and we look at first the psychology, then the physiology, and then the environment. And so there's things in each of these important categories that you could do and no longer do that would absolutely improve the quality and depth of your sleep, as well as the duration. So we can get into some of those things if you like.
Yeah, let's do it.
So one of the biggest things from a psychological standpoint that people don't realize is you can't force or control sleep. Sleep, something that happens naturally, like your heartbeats, your lungs. So trying to force or control sleep, and most people try to do this.
Yep, I've been guilty of that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm going to will myself to sleep, like, and so that frustration, that it's a negative sleep pressure, mental negative sleep pressure, not the adenosine buildup, creates worse sleep. So understanding and just getting to a place of acceptance, embodied acceptance. When you understand how to do that, it's transformational from a psychological standpoint.
This is your captain speaking. Not sorry to interrupt your podcast, because I want to give you something for free. My signature nightly ritual, the 4-3-2-1-30 method. This is the exact nightly ritual that I teach all of my high-performing clients, and I want to give it to you guys because I want you to sleep better, and I want you to have more productive days. So what you get is a detailed outline of the exact 4-3-2-1-30 method with links to everything that I mentioned, so you can start implementing it immediately. All you have to do is head over to info.thecaptainslifestyle.com and enter your name and email, and it will get sent directly to your inbox. So if you want to have better quality sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow feeling energized, alert, and actually excited to have a productive day, then download the 4-3-2-1-30 method. It's free. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, literally, because sleep is the rising tide that raises all ships. So download the 4-3-2-1-30 method, head over to info.thecaptainslifestyle.com, and have the best night's sleep of your life. Sweet dreams. Yeah. So let's see, there's a few places I want to take this. You mentioned cold exposure and then also hot showers. And I've heard kind of both. So I want to hear your take on this. And of course it's, probably going to depend on each person, but from your experience, when, like before bed, if somebody was going to take a shower before bed, and you can mention timing as well, would it be better to take a cold shower or hot shower?
Hot shower, because your body temperature is going to drop as soon as you get out of the shower. I wouldn't take a cold shower right before bed, because your body temperature is going to heat up. Your body's going to, it's so all that energy, it's going to try, and your body's always kind of trying to regulate itself, right? So, but here's the thing, depending on who you speak to and depending on who you ask that question to, some people might say, yeah, cold, jump in the cold tub right before bed. And for some people that works. So I'm not here to say, hey, one is better than the other. Again, this is something you want to experiment with. Like for me personally, when I take a hot shower, and usually it's about an hour before bed, I notice that sort of helps me personally. Not I have a cold plunge in my house, so it's not the cold. So that could be different for you. So this is where it's like there's not a one size fits all, just like there's not a one size fits all diet, because certain people also run at different temperatures. So again, it's like, for instance, my wife, when we get in bed, my wife, she emits massive amount of heat before she goes to sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's like a heater. I'm like, what the hell's going on? So she's emitting all this heat, and I'm like starting to sweat over, like on the other side of the bed. I'm like, this is insane. And my disposition is more like on the cooler side. Like my hands are always a little bit cooler. Like my body temperature is a little bit cooler. So depending on like your disposition as well, and there's like a whole science in Ayurveda, they talk about different dispositions. So that also is like a factor here too. So long story. Was that helpful? I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely. Because I've had another sleep and light expert on my podcast before, and he said the same thing, like hot shower before bed. But for me, I've tried that, and that doesn't really work for me. I almost never take hot showers. I usually always do a cold shower before bed because I run hot, and it cools me off. And sometimes I'll take a full-on ice bath right before bed, like enough to drop my core body temperature, and then I sleep freaking amazing after that. Deep sleep scores through the roof. So yeah, I always tell my clients, it depends. Like if you're not used to cold exposure, like if taking a cold shower is going to raise your heart rate, raise your cortisol, yeah, take a warm shower. And like you said, play around with it, like figure out what works for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, I have friends that are they're giants. These giants that run really, really hot. They got a lot of muscle. They got a lot of like fire. Usually they even have like red hair. They're like these like Vikings. You know what I mean? Like they're like running hot all the time. And so cold at certain times for them is going to be cold for someone like myself, who's a little bit more lean. It's not as Nordic, I would say, as So that's where part of this is like knowing yourself. And now it's pretty cool that there are like genetic tests, and there, things that you can do, but just having your own awareness about like your own body can help you start to make better decisions when it comes to optimization.
Yeah. And I've talked about this on a few podcasts before, so we don't have to go in depth, but I just want you to clarify, as a leading sleep expert, how important sunlight exposure is. And then the inverse of that, how important avoiding artificial light exposure is.
Yeah, so it's absolutely important. Obviously, light and temperature are big, huge factors when we're talking about, controlling those two sleep systems. Light, obviously, first thing in the morning, and then as the sun starts to set, you really want to make sure that if you can watch the sun rise and set, that's like the best thing ever for your circadian clock. But just, optimizing your home by turning off the lights, because, melatonin essentially the melatonin faucet, so to speak, gets turned on as the sun starts to set. There's these cells in our eyes called myopsin cells, and they trigger this whole sort of cascade of hormone release. And so light is sort of the captain of that light ship, so to speak. So then obviously there's blue light. Now, here's my thing though with this. I actually think that it's more so the hyperarousal from the devices that's more detrimental than the actual light from the devices. Like light, for sure, there's science that shows us certain light waves absolutely get in the way of quality sleep. But I also think that the bigger impact is the stimulus that people get from their checking their email, from checking social media. And then, it's like all these like, neurochemicals are being flooded into their system, or watching Netflix shows that are like violent or whatever, or like, there's stimulation. Any type of stimulation at night isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
Outside of like sexual stimulation, because that actually can help your sleep, but like mental stimulation, no, it's not going to help you sleep. So, but to your point about the light, absolutely is a factor, and it's something that people want to definitely experiment with and explore.
Yeah, I would be curious to see a study that looks at, if you're looking at your phone right before bed, and like there would have to be a bunch of different variables, like blue light blockers, no blue light blockers. If they could do like one group looking at their phones with no blue light blocking anything, and they're just reading, reading like an ebook. And then the other group is like scrolling TikTok, for example. I bet that the stimulation from the TikTok or the YouTube, whatever group would be more than reading. And then I would want to do a study that does the same group reading on their phone, no blue light blocking, and then another group reading blue light blocking, and see the difference between those two studies.
That would be an amazing study. I mean, the challenges with a study like that is, number one, it probably no one's going to fund it unless it's a blue light blocking glass company. They might fund it, but it might be a little bit skewed in their favor. Usually these, unfortunately, it's just the nature of how these things go, right? But the other thing is there's so many other factors. Like sleep is such a complex thing. There's so many other factors beyond just that one variable that it would be hard to even if it was like a placebo, double blind and everything like that, even having the sort of gold standard of testing, because sleep is so complex and war is so complex, it would be hard to really, I think, draw like very strong conclusions.
They would have to like stay in the sleep lab and be monitored the whole time. Because then if they were allowed to go home, it's like, okay, did one group watch the sunrise? Did this person eat right before bed? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did a study with 20 people, and I presented it in my TEDx talk in 2019 on sleep, titled The ROI of Sleep. And that's what I was trying using the Oura Ring. I said, okay, for 6 weeks, or every week, everyone is going to try pull one of these levers. Right. And I was hoping to find like which of these levers is going to be the biggest factor for like majority of the people. But what I found was that some levers work for some people better than others. And then also it's just, there's so many other factors that go on in somebody's life that even if they're pulling a lever that might work, there might be some other lever that's being pulled somewhere else that's creating. So it's challenging to really, I think, draw strong conclusions, scientific conclusions with all these variables. It's just really difficult.
Yeah. You mentioned magnesium in that video. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of quality magnesium supplementation. Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, I think it's around 60 to 80% of people are deficient in it. I mean, it's not in our soil anymore, so we're not getting it from our food. And it absolutely, it not only is it going to be good for your sleep because it's going to help you relax, and it's involved in so many things that take place in the body. But it's one of those minerals that even if you don't have sleep issues, you should be supplementing with, because there's a high likelihood. And I'm a big fan of actually, spraying it on your body, because depending on the type of magnesium, there's a lot of people don't realize there's several different types of magnesium, and depending on which type you're taking, it's going to be either more bioavailable or less bioavailable. And so BioOptimizers actually makes a really good one with like, I think 7 different types of magnesium.
Yep. You got a discount code?
I don't. I probably should.
I do.
There you go.
Code Captain Morgan.
There you go. So that's a good one for sure. They make a good product. But I actually, I use spray, but I'm blessed enough to live by the ocean.
Oh, so you got magnesium chloride for free.
Yeah. Yep. And a bunch of negative ions. So I just discharge all my EMF at the end of the day by jumping in the ocean.
Speaking my language.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't have that. So it's kind of like, you try to optimize for what you have. And so there's other ways of like, taking a supplement like magnesium that can help, or spraying it on your body with like ancient minerals, or there's another one I think called Ease that's really bioavailable and nice. The thing about spraying it on your body, they say the absorption rate is better, but sometimes it kind of stings and it feels kind of weird on your body. But again, this is definitely something that people would want to experiment with and see, how it improves their energy and their sleep, because it's definitely plays a role.
Speaking of energy, you mentioned caffeine and adenosine. Talk to us about how that all works and how it impacts sleep.
Yeah. So adenosine is a neurochemical that builds up that creates sleep pressure or this hunger or desire for sleep. And caffeine, if you look at the molecular structure of caffeine and adenosine, it's very similar. And what caffeine does is it actually blocks adenosine. So that's where this like heightened alertness comes from caffeine, is it's actually blocking adenosine from getting in the receptor sites. So unfortunately, caffeine has a half-life of, depending on, how strong and
whether you're a slow or fast metabolizer.
Right. It's going to be, 6-8 hours, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, depending on, your genetics. So it's in your system for a very long time, essentially. Let's just say, anywhere from 10 to, 13 hours. And, so that definitely impacts your sleep for sure. So having, timing your caffeine right. And there are things you can do to upgrade your caffeine, like taking L-theanine or putting in some mushrooms, sort of buffer the negative effects on the adrenal glands. There's just some like hacks there. But it does for sure. It interferes with that sleep pressure system. So you want to make sure that you, if you want to take it the extra step, understand how you metabolize caffeine. And then B, if you use caffeine, understand when to use it. And then also, if you're going to use it, then optimize it with like an L-theanine or mushrooms. That's sort of my take on caffeine. Caffeine's great. It's a great performance enhancer. It's, helps us get things done. Coffee tastes amazing. You just have to be smart with it. You don't want to rely on caffeine to get you through the day. It's definitely impacting your sleep. So it's like borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. What are the mushrooms that you're referring to?
Yeah. So reishi mushroom. So there's like reishi and chaga are like the king and queen of the forest. But also you can, cordyceps, but reishi and chaga specifically when you're putting in your coffee. I think specifically it's reishi that has
reishi is more down regulating, correct?
Yeah. But there's a couple companies that I like for mushrooms, real mushrooms. I don't have a code. Maybe you have a code.
Not for this one.
All right. Real mushrooms, Four Sigmatic, they make some good mushrooms. Yeah. You want to get definitely, if you're going to use mushrooms, make sure that's from a quality company that uses the fruiting body. So they're not mycelium, you're not using the starch you want just the fruiting bodies. And quality of mushrooms is really important. Sun Potion, they make a great mushroom product. But I use real mushrooms and I just take a scoop of that, like a teaspoon, and throw it in. And they have different ones, but the combination I like, it's reishi, chaga, cordyceps, maki, and shiitake, I think it is. But all mushrooms are essentially going to help support the adrenal system and help buffer the acidity of the coffee as well. That's another thing. Although the coffee you drink also matters. So there are certain coffees you can get, clean coffee that has less acid in it, doesn't have pesticides and all those things. The quality also matters.
Yeah. We could keep this podcast going for hours, going down these different rabbit holes of quality of coffee and, types of mushrooms and L-theanine, which is fantastic. So I call it upgraded coffee. I'll usually do a high quality organic coffee. I like Four Sigmatic. I use like their ashwagandha infused coffee or their lion's mane coffee with L-theanine, grass-fed butter, MCT oil. Mix that all up and you're good to go. So before we wrap up, give people some practical tips if they are reliant on coffee to wake themselves up in the morning. How can they start to wean off of that and get on a more regular schedule?
Wow. I mean, the first thing is definitely just start to overhydrate yourself, because caffeine is a diuretic. We lose about 1 liter a night, believe it or not, in respiration and sweat. So before you even have your first cup of coffee, you should wait an hour, because it's going to help buffer the cortisol level there. But just start drinking massive amount of water. That'll also help the negative effects of coming off of caffeine, usually are headaches. So I always say, hey, when you're detoxing off of caffeine, just double up on water. Make sure your water is high quality water, has minerals in it. It's, bioavailable. If you want to go the extra mile, vortex it, so essentially hydrate yourself. Hydrate yourself. Then you can also start to use Other things that are not as strong in caffeine, like teas. Like I'm a huge fan of pu'er tea. Are you familiar with pu'er tea?
Mm-mm.
Man, so pu'er is like incredible. It's higher in caffeine, not as high as coffee, although some probably are. Um, it's a great digestive aid, and it is strong. It's a strong coffee, and a lot of it, they've been using it in China. They call it like there's some emperor's blends, like because only the emperors used to be able to drink this blend, and it's aged and it's fermented, and it's awesome. And so anyway, you could start to then supplement some high quality teas that have caffeine into it, like green tea or pu'er tea. And then you can just start to step yourself down. So going cold turkey, I don't think's a great idea because caffeine is a drug. It's addictive. It is psychoactive, right? You're getting this stimulation from it. And then doing things like supplementing, like ashwagandha or things that can help the nervous system. Passion flower is a great one. Oats, believe it or not. So like oats and hops are great.
So drink beer first thing in the morning. Is that what you're saying?
You can get hop tea. Hop tea is a non-alcoholic. So that you can start to use things that would help sort of rebalance the nervous system, because coming off of caffeine is kind of like you're trying to land a plane that has one of the wings that is just broken off. It's just a little challenging for a lot of people, depending on how addicted and how much caffeine you're on. Is that helpful?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
That's good. The ashwagandha, good natural energy booster. Cordyceps that you already mentioned. Also bringing it back to cold exposure. Take an ice bath first thing in the morning. That'll wake you up.
For sure. Ice bath, 100%.
Watching the sunrise.
Yeah, there's so many things. I mean, you can even, red light therapy. There's so many things you can do to optimize your energy. I think it's really important just to start simple, like stick with the basics. Like so many people, I think, get so hung up on all these technologies and all these like things, and it becomes overwhelming. And then people just don't even take action on any of it.
Yeah.
So like, just keep it simple, and build on it. Like, don't try to do all these things at once. It's not sustainable.
So speaking of that, if you had to say one thing, and of course, everybody's different, but if you had to give one general recommendation that the listeners could take with them and implement, what would that be?
Well, personally, what I've realized is meal timing absolutely affects quality of sleep. Like one of the biggest things I realized from measuring my sleep is if I eat too late, meaning like I need like 3.5 to 4 hour window. If I eat past that window, it absolutely affects my deep sleep. And like last night, for instance, I worked out at the gym a little bit later, got home, ate a little later, and my deep sleep sucked. I mean, I got like 8.5 hours of sleep, but and that's an important stage because that's when your body's actually repairing and recovering, and so much is happening during those stages of sleep. So just create a fasting window for yourself, like 3 to 4 hours fasting window, and honor that because it really will make a difference.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. That's when I fast, or when, the further away from bedtime that I eat, absolutely. I've noticed the biggest change in sleep quality from that.
Yeah. And that's because our bodies heat up.
Yep.
And energy diverted to the stomach. And that energy should be going throughout your body to clear out the cancerous cells and to repair all the damage you've done throughout the day. It shouldn't be diverted to the stomach to digest. That's not the right time for that to happen. You can get away with it once in a while. I mean, whatever, it's life.
Yeah.
But if you can consistently just like move your meal time earlier and then just don't eat, and you can really practice that and have discipline around that, it will make a huge difference in your sleep quality.
Game changer for sure. All right, Devin, this has been fantastic. And like I said, we could probably talk for hours on this, and we'll have to get a part 2 sometime in person. Like we were talking about
great.
Before we started recording. I'll fly down to Florida, rock the mic together there after some grounding and ocean swimming, of course.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, it's more than welcome to. We got lots of ocean right over here. So
Love it. All right.
yeah.
Well, tell people where they can find more about you and everything you've got going on.
So Sleep Science Academy, if you know, that's where we help people with sleep issues, and then all the social channels, Devin Burke Wellness, books on Amazon, TEDx talks on YouTube. So that's where you can find us.
Perfect. All right, guys, everything that Devin and I mentioned will be linked in the show notes, including his social media, his website, all of the different mushrooms and supplements that we recommended, as well as the discount link for Bioptimizer's Magnesium Breakthrough, which is highly recommended, will be in the show notes of this podcast. And Devin, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun to speak with you here.